What's up, my comic comrades? Marvel's Death of Doctor Strange miniseries written by Jed MacKay kicked off back in September, and they really did start the story by killing Stephen Strange again. Yeah, I know, it's in the title, but it's comics, so you never know. Anyway, we covered the first issues of the 5-issue series back in November, which you can watch right here, and we'll also be covering the conclusion of the story, which wraps up in issue 5 in the next week or so. But the series also spawned several tie-in issues showing us how different characters are dealing with his death, and the one that caught our eye the most was Blade 1, the tie-in one-shot. In the issue, Blade is wrestling with the death of his friend, the Sorcerer Supreme, as the new sheriff of the Vampire Nation known as Chernobyl. It sounds pretty awesome, so let's dive in and see what's going on. The issue starts off with us seeing Doctor Strange and Blade teaming up in the past fighting vampires. As captions say, vampires have loathed Doctor Strange for a very long time. An unfortunate side effect of when, with the help of Blade, he killed them all. When Dracula sought the Darkhold, Strange found a way to use the very same dark artifact to erase the undead from Earth. Few can say they helped the Sorcerer Supreme wipe out true evil from the planet. But Blade, the Daywalker, self-styled vampire hunter, stood his ground. Strange and Dracula fought across realms until every vampire on Earth was turned to dust. This is the memory that lays heavy on our hero's heart, as he mourns the greatest of allies, of friends. The comic then brings us to the present in Chernobyl, the Vampire Nation, where the streets are filled with sound with music from the undead as they celebrate the death of Doctor Strange. Meanwhile, the caption reads, as Blade mourns, the beat only grows louder. For those of you who are unaware, the Marvel vampires have developed their own nation, similar to what we've seen with the mutants and their nation, Krakoa. And part of the arrangement made with the United Nations to give the vampires their own nation was that Blade would monitor them as a sheriff of their nation. Anyway, on the next page of the issue, we see Blade brooding while watching the vampires celebrate Strange's death. Moments later, a few young vampires dressed up in Avenger costumes come up to Blade and start mocking him. As the caption says, Blade suspects the costuming trend is as much to make a point to him as it is to mock the dead. Still, he says nothing. You see, as the sheriff of the Vampire Nation, Blade can't just kill vampires willy-nilly. He has to have justifiable cause, so to speak. Anyway, as the young vampires are trying to push Blade's buttons, a vampire named Dahlia comes up saying, the Daywalker's looking grumpy. He may write you up. A young boy vampire dressed as Doctor Strange says to her, we know the rules, Dahlia. Look, but don't munch. Dahlia then tells Blade, when I heard that Dracula consented to having the Daywalker live amongst us like a kind of babysitter, I gotta say, I thought it made him look weak. Seeing you in person, now I know how weak he really is. A voice then says, if I was so weak, Dahlia, my dear, I do not believe you would reduce yourself to taunting my help. As we see Dracula confront her, Dracula goes on to tell her, I tolerate your rudeness because you have yet to break any of my laws. And you and my other council members have their uses, but your friends are not on the council. You do best to remember that. She replies, your laws about the council exist because you know you can't fight us all. You better remember that. To which Drac responds, perhaps it's because of the festivities, but I'm feeling gracious. Would you rather level that threat at me or at our sheriff? Blade looks at her saying, happy to skip the paperwork. Dahlia then says, I'm done here. Plenty of other parties to hit. In private, Dracula tells Blade that his council is just a farce. There are no votes involved, but it allows the most interesting members of our nation to feel as if they have my ear. It avoids unnecessary fighting. Blade responds, you think that Dahlia chick is interesting? Dracula tells him, she has a gift for making alliances with the younger of our kind. Normally, all the young ones need to be satisfied are parties and spectacles, but I do not wish to watch a gaggle of punks get riled up by her ambitions. Speaking of spectacle, allow me to offer my condolences for your loss. Referring to Doctor Strange, Blade answers, you don't care. As they continue to talk, Dracula and Blade hear a crash outside and Dracula tells Blade, what an unfortunate interruption. Do your job and clean up whatever mess they're making. I wouldn't want any of Dahlia's ilk to use tonight as an excuse to riot. So being the sheriff, Blade goes down there to see what's going on, only to find out it's not Dahlia's vampires making a mess of things, but rather uninvited guests not from Earth. On the next page, we see Blade using his blade to cut all these uninvited guests down with the help of Dracula's loyal guard. The guard is then about to kill an alien child, but Blade stops him. On the next page, we find out that this kid was from the same dimension as those warriors, but he was not a fighter, and he didn't speak Earth's language. Dracula orders to bring the child in front of him and some special guests. Before they bring the child, Dahlia says to Dracula, if we're going to talk politics tonight, maybe we should talk about our plans for the Avengers now that Doctor Strange is dead. Dracula replies, I have no plans, Dahlia. I hope that you're too smart to have any of your own. She says, without the Sorcerer Supreme, why are we still bowing to these humans? We should strike now. Instead of giving us a nation, we should take theirs. Blade says, she always like this? Dracula tells him she's older than she looks, but forgets to think in the long term. I have no desire to play hunting games with the Avengers. After some more back and forth with Dahlia and Dracula, he has the child brought to him, where we learn the child's world was attacked by pirates, kidnapping several of the people and dragging them across the dimension blood. ultimately dragging the child here for a new conquest. Captions then say, but Lord Dracula sits like a stone, unmoving. Not that Blade expected him to care. The other vampires, old as they were, have a harder time keeping their reactions hidden. The dismissal, the patronizing sobs, all of it runs up Blade's spine in a fire rage. Holding a child prisoner is bad enough. Making a mockery of them is too much. Blade then says, we're done here. Do you want to put this kid on trial? Then don't do it with an audience. Anything else I say that qualifies as torturing and tormenting non-vampires. And that's my purview. At this point, Dahlia lunges towards Blade with a dagger saying, how dare you, Blade? I'm sick of your crap. You, Daywalker, and the Avengers, you think you control us. Send a message back to your Avenger friends as she fights Blade, but on the next page, we see Dracula grab her by the neck from behind, saying, need I remind you how we behave towards guests? Blade then says, put her down. Last thing I need is you stepping in. Dracula says, this isn't about you, Blade. I will not be disrespected. Guards, take them. As they take Dahlia and the child to a cell. But as they're about to imprison the child, we see him activate a power while saying, you are one of the angriest of them all. What if we put that rage to good use? As we see him turn into some sort of alien vampire, the alien child then takes down the guards, freeing himself and Dahlia, saying, fear is one of the easiest emotions to play with. She asks, what did you do exactly? He tells her, my people feed on emotion. But first, you nurture it, grow it. She responds, impressive. I assume you did something similar at Dracula's party. Why should I trust you instead of killing you for meddling? He tells her, my ability to feed is limited only by distance, but I could share it temporarily. I simply want to feed. But you, I'm sure you could think of a few ways to use your enemy's fear and anger against them. She says, I most certainly can. A little bit after this, Blade and Dracula realize that the alien child and Dahlia have escaped. Blade then walks away saying, if she hurt the kid, but Dracula says something to the effect of, come on, if Dahlia was able to do this, do you not think she would have tried it on you? Did you not realize the child is a psychic vampire? Blade says, no way, and Dracula says, I suspected it from the moment I saw him. I've seen many such creatures in my time, and the way he played at your heartstrings made it obvious. You are predisposed to pity the weak and hate the strong. And so you saw what the child wanted you to see so that he could invoke the strongest emotions around him. Blade asks, then why not take them out immediately? Dracula says, they played into my plans. I needed to rid Dahlia without the appearance of assassinating my enemies soon after our nation's birth. So I used them to trick her into disrespecting you, my guest, in front of witnesses. I should have been more weary of the two of them teaming up and being nuisances. Captions then say Blade hears the vampire's words, but they are muted under the roar of the now unmanipulated emotions. He's been played. One of Dracula's men then says they've located Dahlia and the creature, at which point Blade obviously goes after them, but when he does, Dahlia starts attacking Blade once again, and at first has the upper hand and is on top of him, choking him. But he just kicks her off, and when she stands up in front of a dark alley, a caption says, Dahlia is consumed by her rage. So much so that even as a vampire, she cannot see what lurks in the shadows that surround her, as Dracula comes out and grabs her into the darkness, killing her. At this point, it's Blade versus a psychic vampire. At first, he gets thrown around quite a bit, but towards the end, he gets thrown by the vampire into a streetlight and says, it's been a while since I fought so long, I got to watch the sun come up. The psychic vampire says, Dahlia mentioned most of your kind hated sunlight, and that you were special. But your sun has no effect on me. Blade responds, didn't think it did. All sunrise means is it's time for the streetlights to go out. As he grabs the broken streetlight he was thrown into and impales the psychic vampire, killing him. After this, we see Blade return to the same spot he was at the beginning of the issue, outside of the club where the vampires are partying while he's standing guard being their sheriff. With a caption saying the immortal undead quickly go back to partying as if nothing has changed, except for the two youngest who have not yet learned to hide their grief. Blade is reminded of the anger he felt knowing that Dracula had used him, toyed with them in front of the so-called council. At this point, the young vampire tells Blade, do you think any of us are going to forget what you did to Dahlia and Leslie? Blade warns him to go away, but he doesn't, at which point he uppercuts the kid before stabbing him with a stake, which kills him while Dracula watches and smiles, and with that, the comic ends. Overall, I thought this was a really solid comic. The story had a nice twist, and it's fun seeing Blade as the sheriff of the Vampire Nation, where he has to work alongside Dracula, the dude he hates the most. It was also a solid tie-in for the Death of Doctor Strange series. I definitely recommend you read it for yourself if you're a fan of the Death of Doctor Strange storyline or Blade in general. That way you can get all the little nuances, but more importantly, you can support the creators who are making these books. Anyway, let us know what you guys think in the comments. And that's gonna bring today's episode to a close, but if you like today's video, check out this one right here. But if you like all of our videos, subscribe, like, and comment. It helps us out. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things comics.